Hi, I'm Witch Mike. Welcome to the show. In this video will be about which is better for a favorite horror franchise is
Resident Evil.
about Resident Evil 7 and 8. Let's begin. In Resident Evil 7 and 8, you play as Ethan Winters. As Ethan looking for his missing wife, Mia. As he traveled to the south of the US, he encountered the Baker's family. The Baker's family are somewhat odd, as you meet Jack, Margaret, Lucas, and Zoe, and also Grandma. As Ethan encounters multiple creatures as he fights to survive the House of Horrors. But then later on, Ethan finds out that Mia was on a mission to escort someone important. As Ethan has vision of a little girl who is behind the scene. Ethan has to find a way to free Mia from Evelyn control. In the Resident Evil 8, as Ethan and Mia escape from the Baker's family, as Ethan and Mia has a baby named Rose. But then Chris crashed the party, took away his baby and killed Mia. But also say nothing why he did it. As Ethan was escorted, something happened to the escort. As Ethan wake up in the middle in the forest, travel to an unknown village. As Ethan been attacked by werewolf or lichens, Ethan had to find out what happened to his baby. And also what the hell is going on with this village. As Ethan found out that Miranda is behind everything. As Ethan trying to find out why they want their baby. As Rose is somewhat a cute but also dangerous and very powerful. For the best story, I have to say Resident Evil 7. It's simple, it's clear of as Ethan looking for his wife, and then she's infected, and then there's a reason for him to be there, to be part of the family and so on. And it's great as trying to figure out who's behind all of it. And you think it's the little girl, and then the little girl is the granny all along, as you see her everywhere. And then in Resident Evil 8, it's okay. It doesn't make sense of Chris took Rose, and he doesn't explain why to Ethan in the first place. He's like, he make him look like the bad guy. It's just so weird. And then he ended up in the village, and how convenient, as they were, Ethan was taken, and Rose also, and ended up in the village of Miranda who is behind the whole thing. So it's too like in the revelation about how Ethan is a mole the whole time he's dead. And it's okay, but there's a lot of mystery. It doesn't make it, not a mystery, but a lot doesn't make sense of. Okay, so he's a mole. Somehow, Lady D, she took some of his blood, and she doesn't notice like he's not alive or something. But whatever. But for the story, it's okay, And surprisingly, this is like a finale for Ethan, somewhat. So Rosemary grew up, and she's like a fret kind of way. So she's like under the protection by Chris to keep her safe or not have her run loose. So Resident Evil 8 story there's a bunch of plot holes. For Resident Evil 7, like I said, it's simple. It's great. The mystery behind it, and you kind of think this is part of the Resident Evil world, and it is in the end, as you find out, as Chris show up in the end. That's great. But for the story, I had to go with Resident Evil 7. In Resident Evil 7, for the enemies, sadly there's not that many to talk about, as you deal with multiple mole creatures, as they just come up to you, bite you, or grab you and then bite you. And they also a mole creature with a blade, and then there's another mole creature runs in 4 legs, as they're fast and do major damage. And also there is a fat mole that spit acid or whatever it is and blows up. And for the bosses, as you deal with Jack, Margaret, and Evelyn, as the best part is as you fight Jack multiple times, as some way that Jack is somewhat similar to the Birkins bosses. As you beat him multiple times, he doesn't stay dead. As he is fun to play against multiple times as he fights different ways. As Margaret is somewhat a bug lady, as she hides, grabs you and bites, or send her insects against you. As Evelyn, as a final boss, she is somewhat mediocre, as she doesn't do much, as she turned into a giant face, as you had to shoot her right in the face, but then she turns into a giant, somewhat a slug monster. But not much goes on in this battle, sadly. In the Resident Evil 8, thankfully there was more enemies to deal with, but somewhat not a new type of monsters, as you deal with werewolves, giant trolls, and other creatures from this castle, somewhat zombies. As for the bosses, as you fight the 4 lords, as you fight Lady D.
That's a huge bitch!
Heisenberg. Donna. Embero. And the final boss, Miranda. As you fight Lady D, as she is somewhat okay, but before you fight her, you had to deal with her 3 daughters. As each one you had to find ways to beat them, as you had to bring in the cold air in order to make them vulnerable from any attack. But if you can't, the only option is to run. And for Lady D, she is just a flying creature that doesn't do much, as you have to shoot her in the air, and that's all you can do. But before you fight her, as after you kill one of her daughters, she becomes Mrs. X, as she stalks for you all over the castle. But unfortunately, she is not that dangerous or menacing as Mr. X in Resident Evil 2.
Jesus Christ!
As Moreau, it is not really much to do, as he turned into a fish monster, so your only option is to clear out the water. And Moreau would be vulnerable. But just because you fight him in land doesn't mean it's easy to fight. As Moreau, worst attack is shooting acid in the air as you have to find cover. But I had to say, this is pretty much, I would say, the best fight. The best boss battle in the game. As Donna, as she has a bride puppet, as a bride is somewhat scary, but not that scary at all in the end. As you try to survive in the basement at Donna's house, as you encounter a big, grotesque baby. At first, it is horrifying, and also feel like I'm playing Silent Hill in a way, and very scary. Sadly, it's very short. As you fight Donna, you have to find the puppet 3 times in order to damage it. And sadly, that is the end of it. As Heisenberg, it is a somewhat out of place boss battle, as you control a tank built by Chris. As Heisenberg can control metal. As you have to shoot him, you can use cannons or machine gun and keep your distance. The boss battle is okay. It doesn't feel like Resident Evil in a way, in my opinion. For Lady Miranda, she is a pretty tough boss battle. And I have to say I'm really glad compared to the last game. As Miranda throws everything at you, as she changes multiple forms, as you have to keep your distance from all time and use different weapons to hit her to make more damage. Miranda is a pretty good final boss battle. As most of the game you fight Lycans or werewolves. They're pretty challenging as they are very aggressive, especially in the hardest mode. Thankfully, each map in the game gives you new types of enemies, as you don't feel like the previous game as you're fighting the same type over and over using the same strategy, especially closing the door on them. But for which is better for enemies and bosses, it's a tough one. It's like one side, you have one game, Resident Evil 7, you have less enemies. Resident Evil 8, you have more enemies. The bosses are okay. You know, there's like also mini bosses in the game. You know, there's a guy with a turbine engine for a body. You know, it's like a mini boss somewhat, but it is so tough. To be honest, I go with Resident Evil 7 because the bosses for the Baker's family are the best. Unfortunately, not for Lucas, because Lucas there's no boss battle except for the DLC. But for the main game, fighting Jack the first time is, you know, you can drive over Jack, or Jack gets in the car and he drives you over. It's great, you know. And Margaret, it's great too. As a bug creepy lady, you know, she makes like these moth creature flying over the place. It's hard to hit. It's great. So I would say Resident Evil 7 is better for enemies and bosses. For the Resident Evil environment, it's also a tough one, because in Resident Evil 7 you just explore the Baker's home, you know, and it's like the Resident Evil 1, you know, the mansion. You first time you go in and you don't know what's in there, and you don't know what's coming out in the dark corners, you know. And then some areas it kind of mess with you with the darkness or the sound, and it's great. But it's Resident Evil 8 Village. It's, you know, like it's say if, you know, you explore a village but it's small, but you explore the castle and other places. So, but it doesn't have that creepy atmosphere compared to the 7. For 8, sadly, is as it may be big and like to explore, but it's not that, you know, scary in a way. For the best environment, I would say Resident Evil 7. As for the game contact for Resident Evil 7, it was amazing. There is a RE engine graphics, as the game will give you a whole new feeling as first person mode, especially every time you enter a room or open a door, as you lose focus at what you look at. As the gameplay is pretty fun. It's also very interesting as compared to the previous games, as you play in third person mode or play in tank control in a way. As Resident Evil 4, you finally have aiming better. But this one is I know this is not the first Resident Evil game as you shoot in first person mode, but it's pretty damn good. And for the puzzles are okay. They're not that really challenging. They're pretty easy, thankfully. But for those who want a more challenging puzzle compared to the other games, this is okay. And for the music for the game are pretty good also. You can also upgrade your weapons, but you have to find upgrade package that are hidden throughout the map. And also, as you have to find antique coins to unlock shots that give you more stamina or more health, or unlock a powerful gun. Also, you find VHS tapes, as you can watch them as you watch as the previous people who visit the baker's home. And also some of them will show you some clues to solve some puzzles. Also, you get random phone calls. Also, you will find some backpacks that increase your inventory space. For Resident Evil 8, as this game has the same as RE engine, it's good as well. But this game, you have more weapons, more to loot, to craft, and also for gathering treasures as you give it to the Duke. But surprisingly, the Duke will ask you a favor to gather ingredients, as each food that gives you a different bonus to your health, or give you a different type of stamina, as more health, running, carrying, and crafting. Also in the Resident Evil 8, that this game has mercenary mode that is pretty damn good and challenging, just like the previous games. As you unlock new weapons, as long as you do the highest challenging to unlock new weapons. And also in this game, as you upgrade your weapons, in this game you actually explore more compared to the previous game. And for the music, it is okay. Sadly, this game doesn't have a good music compared to Don't Tell and Rosie. For combat, I had to say 8 because there's more weapons in it. It's more to shoot enemies with and so on. They're pretty good weapons too, But 7, it's not that much. They had good weapons, but not that fun. Oh, the best weapon you can take out. But like I said, 8 has more weapons, obvious. They have to. But I had to say 8 is the best. Especially you play all kinds of weapons in mercenary mode. It's pretty fun. So what do I think? Which is the better game of 7 and 8? I would say Resident Evil 7, definitely. It's like I said, it has a fresh feel to it. It's not a zombie game, but it does have that the feel of Resident Evil in it. The dread and all the kinds of creature you have to fight with. So, but fortunately for 8, I was really looking forward to it. But sadly, 8 is a Resident Evil 4 copycat. And it's sad so many ways. Especially they make a reference to the 4th game as the Duke, who is like the I forgot the guy in 4th game he sell you weapons, the same the Duke does, and even the Duke mentioned about him. So, and this it is funny how Capcom, like they know they made a Resident Evil 4, copy to 8. And it's not in a good way, sadly. Especially I love Resident Evil 4. To me, it's the best game. This is the best Resident Evil game. So, and sadly, there is a Resident Evil 4 remake coming soon. Man, it's gonna be so weird to play after this one. But as a story, like I say, it doesn't make sense. But Resident Evil 7 is really fun. And the great thing about Resident Evil 7 is the song I really enjoy is Don't Tell Aunt Rhodey, I believe. But it's really good. I really enjoy this song. Sadly, the 8 doesn't have any memorable song compared to the 7. It sucks. But for Resident Evil 7, I really enjoyed the game. It's really fun. And it's like a whole new feeling playing this game too. So, yeah, Resident Evil 7 is the best. But for Resident Evil 9, I hope they really end the tale with the Ethan. Especially, we believe he's dead. Maybe there's a bunch of theories he might be alive. But to Resident Evil 9, I hope it's good. I hope it has like good ending to it. Especially seeing Chris being so old, it makes me feel old too. But to see Chris, man, it's like how they did with him in 8. But they kind of make him up for him in the end. But for Resident Evil 9, I hope it's good. I hope they learn their mistakes and make 9 a great game. So, hopefully, it come out soon. But Resident Evil 7 is great. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you do, hit that like button. And you want to see more of my videos? And hit that subscribe button also.
shouldn't have come here.
No shit, Sherlock!